the bullet pierced through my right shoulder, and the actual bullet itself is still lodged in my lower back today. Growing up in that foster care system, I was maybe 3 to 4 years old. I started that identity crisis at such a young age. I didn't want to give my heart up. I didn't want my heart to be hurt and broken again. Why does no
Mm.
one want me? What could be so wrong with me? I never had an opportunity to meet my biological mother, my father. So I started off with a huge void in my life. I'm going to be a person that does not allow circumstances to define who I am.
Team X is about transformation for executives. And in our dictionary, executives are not just CEOs. They're people that manage money and people. And we have an alignment for you guys into the mindset of 3 spheres that we cover is relationships, health, and wealth. Hello, guys. Welcome to Team X. I have a privilege to introduce a wonderful guest. He is an author. He has an amazing story to share with you guys. It's about building, becoming, and breaking. Today, we're going to cover a leader. He's a commander sergeant major retired, goes by the name of Donald Robertson, and we call him Rob here. This story is none like the other. He went through foster care, anxiety, through a near-death turning point into discipline. There's leadership involved and legacy. This story is going to be so inspiring to you guys, and it's definitely going to get you off your seat and get you into action. So without further ado, guys, this is Rob. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks for having me today, Team Mets. Thanks for having me.
So excited to unpack. Guys, this story is about building, becoming, and breaking. He's an author, so we're going to get right into it, okay? So tell us, Rob, what inspired you to write your own book? It's on Amazon, by the way. We're going to post the links, okay?
Yeah, so what inspired me to write the book was I attended a conference called Banner Brothers with a group of men, and they were sharing their stories and some of the hardships that they had went through as they were seeking Christ and seeking to better themselves, not only as men, but also as fathers and husbands, and just better, people in general, all around. So when I was listening to their stories, I started to realize a lot of their stories resonated with me. And my story is unique, in my opinion, where I went through foster care, I went through abuse while I was going through the foster care system,
Mm.
and went through divorce as a child, and just growing up in that environment, and how that really shaped my life and some of the challenges that were associated with that. So I felt like this story would be one that a lot of people in our society can resonate with and identify with. And
Sure.
for those that feel like they're struggling, this would be a great story to show them that, regardless of what your surroundings are, you can definitely overcome it.
I love where we're starting already. Great energy, by the way. So let's talk about the breaking. It was your beginning of your story. So let's talk about the foster care and a lot. I don't want to give too much of the story because I do want people to read it, but tell us a little bit about your background, about being a child and what it was like growing up. What you described in our story.
And you're spot on. The breaking aspect of the story, the journey, if you will, was growing up in that foster care system. I'll be mindful not to spoil the book as well, but growing up in that foster care system, especially as a child, because you try to ask yourselves questions as, what am I doing wrong? Why does no
Mm,
one want me?
yes.
Why am I being forgotten? And
Right.
we're young, so and at that particular age, I was maybe 3 to 4 years old. So I'm like, what could be so wrong with me? Am
Right.
I not like the other kids that know their mom and know their dad? And unfortunately for me, I never had an opportunity to meet my biological mother, my biological father. So I started off with a huge void in my life at such a young age. So
Right.
that was the catalyst of the breaking period that I talk about in
Sure.
my book.
I can relate to that because I did go
Yeah.
to a foster home. I know that that itself, when you kind of shared about like how you just wanted to perform for them to like you know, it was like unsaid. Like maybe elaborate more on that for our audience, please.
Yeah, because when you're, and you probably can identify with this, Liz. When you're going from foster home to foster home, you wake up and you kind of learn this new family and you learn this new community and you may make some friends because you're there for different periods of time. And I don't know all the background behind that. Maybe it's like when the family says, "Hey, we made our decision. We don't want Rob anymore. We don't want Liz anymore.
Right,
You can have him back." But you start to wonder, like, what am I doing wrong? Did I ask for too many things? Did I wait a minute? I don't know all the answers and the reasons behind it, but you really start to question yourself as a young child to say, I want to be a perfect child. So I want to try to
right.
answer questions right when they ask me questions.
Mm,
When they take me here, do I act a certain way that's not going to be abrasive or, that's going to embarrass them or anything like that?
right.
So you just
Yeah,
really
yeah.
try to put on this act to be this perfect person. But at the same time, you're just a child and you just want to have fun and you just want to, do things that other kids do at 3 and 4 and 5 years old. So
Right.
it's a
Wow.
very challenging thing at such a young age.
You talk about it in your book, but your belonging, your sense of identity, did that carve the way you got to see things from that breaking point?
It really did. It made me look at things totally different, more so probably than other children at that young age,
Mhm.
because I started to automatically wonder why I am being forgotten. Why am I not being wanted?
Oh,
So it made me want to be accepted and do
yes.
whatever I could possibly do to be accepted. So whether that was, putting on a facade per se, but whatever it took for someone to say, yes, I will accept him the way he is. So whatever that meant to that parent, to that couple, that's what I tried to do at such a young age. And I think that really made me and it's still, with me today where I have kind of gotten past it, but I never allowed myself to get too close to people because
Mm,
at such a young
okay.
age, once I started to feel emotions in my heart for someone, I was ripped away from it. Again, most people don't have to go through that at such a young age. You don't really get into
Right.
that era of your life until you're more of a young adult and you get into relationships. But yeah, I started that identity crisis at such a young age. I didn't want to give my heart up because I didn't want my heart to be hurt and broken again.
Thank you for being so vulnerable. And you
Absolutely.
know that I can relate to your story. And I just want the audience to know that if you're experiencing this, guys, this is why another reason you should read the book,
Right.
because there are things that I can relate to Rob, growing up in such a not stable home and yeah, going through the emotions of not feeling wanted or feeling abandoned. That's a real emotion. I was happy. I celebrated you when you got adopted and finally a foster family took you in. Did that like now set the course like, oh my gosh, now I can finally breathe again as a child?
100%. Once we got to and then when I say we, I mean my sister and I. But once I was adopted, I finally felt like, wow, now I have finally
Right.
made it to a couple that loves me, that's going to take me into their home. They're going to raise me and give me all the skill sets and things that other kids, had the love, the care, the community, the sense of belonging that other kids were already experiencing. Now I finally felt like I will have an opportunity to experience that myself for the first time, almost 6 years, almost 7 years old at that point. It really was a great feeling when we finally were able to go to, I remember it vividly. And at that particular time, my adopted mom she was like a seamstress. So she had made us this nice little black suit with a little vest and nice little white shirt
Oh,
underneath. We went to the courthouse and I can vividly remember the judge asking,
wow.
do you want to accept the Robertsons as your adopted parents? And I was like, yes, I would love to. So it really was one of the defining moments of my life at such a young age to say, finally, someone has taken me in, say they're my mother, my father, and I finally have a home. So I was so appreciative of that.
I wasn't going to take it this way, but I think that there are some parents who are going to be listening to this who can't have children. How important is it when they can't have children, the adoption process? Like, I know it meant a lot for you. Can you speak into that a little bit?
Absolutely. For those parents out there that are unable to have children for whatever reason, there's so many kids that are in the foster care system. I was just, one of those, probably tens of thousands of kids that were in the
Wow.
foster care system. I will tell you that I can tell you from my own personal experience, we want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We want you to
Wow.
adopt us. So do not hesitate if you feel that this is a pathway that you want to take. There's so many kids that would love to be taken into your home, taken into your life, and given that love that I know you as a foster parent will be able to give to them. So please don't hesitate because there are kids like myself when I was at that age that would love to have that
Mm.
home feeling and that sense of belonging to people and parents that love them.
So it became unstable again. So it's like there was a sense of relief, Rob, when I was reading it. And I was like, yes, we're past the breaking point. Oh, no,
Yeah.
we're not. There was another breaking point that had happened. So mom and dad, didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so how did you survive emotionally? What was the beliefs that followed that into your adulthood from that point?
Yeah, that was a heartbreak for me. And I know divorce happens. Divorce happens in normal homes, not only just foster care homes.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. I was around 10 years old at that particular point when
Hmm.
my adopted parents divorced. And that really weighed heavily on me. I understand that as parents, there are going to be some, differences between adults that may happen. But divorce is challenging on kids, especially as foster kids. And when that happened for me, I kind of felt like, did I do something wrong?
Right. Oh my
I kind
gosh.
of reverted back to all of the shifting of homes and the unstableness
Mm.
prior to this family life. Was this breakup, was this divorce caused by me? So I started
Wow.
once again started questioning myself, did I attribute to this? I think that is one of the biggest things that affected me from the divorce outside of there isn't a father in the home anymore. And me as a young
Mm.
boy, wishing that I had that father figure to teach me those skills that typically fathers teach, like cutting the grass and, working on the house and using tools and,
Yes.
doing things on your car, things like that. I didn't have that opportunity, unfortunately. So
Mhm.
yeah, I had to
Mhm.
adapt to that, and overcome that.
So we're coming to the part where you were in college now. I read in your story that you had to actually stop college. Is that correct? To support the family. And then we have that incident that had happened, hanging out with the wrong crowd, just partying. This was like one night of party. And let's speak about that.
I did go to college initially after high school. Unfortunately, when I was in high school and transitioning into college, I was already working to help my single mother pay
Wow.
bills. So, and I recall that there were some times I would get a paycheck from working and I didn't receive one penny of it. The entire paycheck would go directly to my mother to help, keep the lights on, things like that, keep the water running, so on and so forth. And at that particular point in my life, I felt obligated
Mm-hmm.
because unfortunately I didn't have a father. So I was considered the man of the household, just 15, 16, 17 years old.
Oh
And now
my
that I
gosh.
graduate high school and go off to college, there's a void back home. And that void is I don't have the resources to continue to pay for school and also pay for bills that need to be paid at home. So the burden just became a little bit too much for me to bear on my shoulders with college and coursework and trying to keep up with the tuition and book fees and those type of things, and
Mm-hmm.
an
Mm-hmm.
apartment. So I
Good.
had to end up taking one over the other. And
Okay.
to me, family meant more than the college education at that particular moment in my life. So I dropped out of college, moved back closer to home, and you know started working full time to help my mother pay with bills. And since now, I'm at the age of 18 and have a lot more responsibility at that particular age. I'm getting into, streets and clubbing and things where I probably definitely should not have allowed my life to go. And unfortunately, literally right around my 18th birthday, I am out hanging out with the wrong crowd, and I leave out of a nightclub and I get into an altercation, and that altercation led to me getting shot. The bullet pierced through my right shoulder, and the actual bullet itself is still lodged in my lower back today. It was never removed because it was as the bullet kind of traveled through my shoulder and went into my back, it kind of stuck almost about 2 inches from my spine. So the doctors felt that if they performed surgery, it could be detrimental because it was so close to my spine. There was the
Mm-hmm.
potential that I could be paralyzed from that. So they didn't want to perform the surgery. They felt there was enough muscle tissue around the bullet to where it wouldn't move, and just leave it as is, to not cause any further damage by going in and removing the bullet. So I still have the bullet in my back today, but it doesn't affect any functionality or anything like that, with my body. Yeah, so that was that
Oh my
aspect of my
gosh.
life. So, I was still in my breaking period at that
Mm-hmm.
particular time.
Yes. So that's when things start to take off for you. Was that the moment that gave you a second chance to
Yeah,
pivot your life? Okay.
absolutely. That actual moment was the defining moment for me to say, you need to look at yourself in the mirror
Wow.
and ask yourself, what are you doing and what are you doing wrong? Why are you here laying in the hospital? Why are you almost at the point of losing your life? You need to make a lifestyle change. And at
Mm-hmm.
that particular moment, I started praying. I started
Wow.
asking God for direction, to come in and give me, direction to where I needed to go, because obviously, as a man, I am not thinking straight. So
Mm-hmm.
the only way that I can do this is with your help. So I started praying and turning to God. It really was almost like, a serendipitous moment where I was out eating at a restaurant. And as I'm sitting there eating, that little voice, that little conscious voice of God spoke to me and said, I want you to look over there and talk to that gentleman. And I looked up and looked over, and it was a recruiter. It was an Army recruiter. He was in his uniform and he was sitting there having his lunch. And I built up the courage to go over there and listen to the voice from God tell me to go do that. And he said, hey, if you're really serious about this, I will come meet with you on this day, and we'll go down, we'll take the ASVAB. And if you pass the ASVAB, then I can get you to MEPS and get you an assignment for your first duty station. So that really was the turning point of my
Yes.
life, and really the turning point for me to go from the breaking period
Yeah.
to the
The
building
becoming.
period.
I love that. You know, guys, it's such a treat to have an author here because he did not share the part of God in that story. So I'm so glad you shared that and elaborated. That is so neat. So here we are. You're accepted in the military. And again, this is going to bless so many people. Let's talk about that journey when you first entered in. I know what you shared, so I don't want to tell them, but I guess for the kids that are, I don't know, thinking that they have no direction in
Right,
life, Rob, maybe speaking to them about that since you were just 18,
right.
what was going on in your head as you went into the military? What emotions did you experience?
Yeah, so by the time I actually joined the military, I was 19 years old at that particular time. And I get down to Fort Benning. That is where my basic combat training was conducted at. And I was really nervous about that because, at that particular moment in time, I had never really been too far away from home and where I grew up. So now I'm taking off, I'm leaving, all family and friends behind to take on this journey of joining the United States Army. So I get down to Fort Benning and I remember the first night I get out of the van, I walk into this building of just drill sergeants and army personnel, and I was very nervous. Um,
Mm,
my anxiety is kicking in, and I thought that because it was so late when we arrived. I don't know why we got there so late, but it was very late when we arrived. And most of the trainees, other service members, they were already in their bunks asleep. So I thought when the drill sergeants finally give us our bunk and told us, hey, you're gonna be, it was like me and 8 other guys that traveled down there together. So he gave us our bunks and everything and told us, hey, we'll be back in here like 6 o'clock in the morning. We'll wake you guys up. So that was the first night, and there's some other stuff I put in the book that I won't put here. But so I fast forward, I get down to basic training about 2 weeks later. What I want to share with this audience is I allowed doubt to kick in. I
mm,
allowed doubt to surface. I'm
mm.
going through the breaking period through my life, and I'm trying to get into the building period of my life.
Sure.
And you're going to always have doubt when you try to start doing things to better yourself.
Wow.
When the doubt kicks in, that's nothing more than, I like to say, than the devil just trying to sneak in and use his tactics to tell you that you can't do something, you can't achieve it, you can't
Yes.
accomplish it. But you have to listen to your voice and you have to listen to God and keep going, keep moving
Wow.
forward and be resilient and be perseverance through all of the voices of the devil trying to sneak in. So as I'm at basic training, day 3, I let the devil come in and I try to quit.
Mm.
But
Hmm.
the power of God didn't allow them to let me quit. So
Whoa.
that was one of the most defining moments because that moment right there really was the shaping point and the building period or the building point for my life. Because had I quit, what would I have done? Would I return back and just fell back into that same lifestyle?
Yes.
This time, if I would have been shot, would I have survived? So I'm really grateful that um, the drill sergeants don't allow me to quit. And it really became, my foundation for the rest of my life moving forward.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. Yeah. I remember, you know, the only thing us civilians know about the military is what we hear about it or we watch it in the movies, but I
Mhm.
felt like I was able to see it in real time. You said that, your sergeants were like, it's what did you say that they break you down, but the only to bring you back up? Like, can you
Right.
interject? Yeah, can you explain that to people? Because
Yeah.
that's
So
really hard for people to understand.
yeah, and it really is an analogy. So it's almost like saying that we're going to break you down to the point where we're going to take you to a place of you just feeling like I am now back at the bottom. I
Wow.
am back at a starting point. But what that is designed to do is to rid you of any of your old habits, your
Hmm.
old ways of thinking, your old ways of spiritual connection, and all of those things. And now we're going to teach you and train you new ways of thinking, new ways of processing information, new ways of moving forward and working as a team, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's there to break you down initially, but you're going to build off of this from the core, from the
Wow.
root level, moving forward. And it's really a unique process that the military uses, but it's extremely effective.
Okay. Okay, I love that. So we talked about them not letting you quit. Would you
Mhm.
say then this was like were they like kind of like, I don't know, different type of leaders in your life to actually now you are becoming someone else? Like, can we elaborate more on that about because you became a very good leader from this training?
Yeah, so I had a drill sergeant that was very invested in me. I think from that particular moment where I did try to quit, that
Mm-hmm.
took me aside and just talked to me. And at
Oh,
that particular moment, he
wow.
wasn't a drill sergeant. He was just
Wow.
being, a human. And he said, right now we're just going to talk. And he actually gave me his first name, which I can't remember at this particular time. But that was a very defining moment because I never seen him that way. I only saw the
Wow.
drill sergeant aspect of him, but he allowed me to see the human aspect of him. And that really hit me in a different manner because, all I had saw was the yeller, the screamer, the barker. But the more personable person really connected with me, really resonated with me. And it really motivated me to say, I don't want to fail him, you know?
Wow,
So it
that's
it it kind of gave me that level of commitment to move
mhm,
forward because
mhm.
he instilled that in me through his personable talk with me. And I used
Okay.
his method of leadership.
Yes.
I adopted that and emulated that in my life to this day.
Wow. Wow, that is okay. Guys, I hope you guys got that. I hope wow, that is really, really neat to know that he just connected with you on a very human level,
Right, right.
personal. Um, do you feel like that's why was that the inspiration for you to climb up? You went really, really high in your ranks. Maybe
Mhm.
speak on that. Like why did you climb these ranks? I started seeing that you had goals after goals and you wanted to become this and you did.
The whole catalyst for me climbing the ranks really stemmed back to my childhood. It stemmed
Mm,
back from not being accepted, foster home to foster home. It stemmed back to I finally get accepted. That home ended up in divorce, single mom. And I said, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to go back to that environment. I don't want to have
yeah.
to go back and keep going through this perpetual cycle of all I'm going to be able to do is stay here in this town, work and pay bills and help people that are not trying to help themselves, in my opinion. So I wanted to break that cycle and I wanted to do something that separated me from that and and to the point where I could be my own man now. And
Mm,
I didn't
mhm.
never have to rely upon that lifestyle, that environment ever again. So I was really driven. I used that as my fuel from my humble beginnings because I didn't have a lot. I didn't have a lot growing up. I didn't have traditional Christmases and toys under the tree, and all those type of things. And I wanted to ensure that this military, this enlistment was giving me an opportunity to never have to go back to it if I put in the work to be a great soldier. And that's
Mm.
exactly what I did. And
Wow.
I would say that same analogy, could be used to any person listening to this, whether that is the military or whatever industry profession that you're going after. Put in the work, do do the necessary things to get promoted. Be resilient. If the promotion doesn't come right away, that doesn't mean you need to give up. You need to shift. It just means you need to be patient and you need to continue to do the things that you're doing. So when that promotion opportunity does present itself, you are the person that they select at that particular occupation. So this same analogy can be applied to any industry. It just doesn't have to be the military.
I just wanted to pause here and elaborate on what you're talking about resilience, because a lot of people have this attitude, Rob, that, life has happened to me. But it seems like even with all the things that you went through, you could have given up, you could have
Mhm.
stopped, you could have said, poor me, but instead it fueled you. Our generation today, the younger ones, they need to be inspired by it. Like, how do we use it for us instead of to us?
So I like to say that almost everyone that you're going to encounter in life, they're going to have icebergs. What does Rob mean by that? And I like to use this analogy because I think it's a great analogy that almost anyone can identify with. When you go to a park and you see a duck on the water, that duck looks just seamlessly just floating along the water, but you have no idea how fast that little duck's feet are moving under the water. On the surface, that duck looks calm, smooth, like he has no worries. But under the surface, he is really pedaling away. But what do I mean by that? From the structure, the appearance, the outer shell, people may not exhibit a lot of the icebergs, the things that are internally affecting them, that are internally bothering them in their
Wow.
lives, from their
Wow.
childhood, from failed relationships, you name it, drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be. What I did was I took those icebergs that bothered me, that challenged me. And I use those as my fuel to say that
Wow.
I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to be a person that does not allow these circumstances, these challenges to define who I am. And I will not
Mhm.
allow them to overcome me. And I'm going to do that not only through my own, perseverance and grit and determination, but I'm also going to use the help of God and faith through
Come
all of this.
on. That is so good. That's a scripture right there. Rejoice when you run into problems, it produces
Absolutely.
perseverance. That's what you do.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I felt like you were so human with was,
Mhm.
talking about your icebergs, is when you revealed that, I don't know if you were coming back off the plane from service, but everybody else had a family to greet them, but
Yeah.
you didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, Rob, my heart dropped when I read that. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, so even if you had all these rankings, that still longing was still there.
There was two times that happened to me actually in my military career. The first time was when I originally left home, going into basic training, and I graduated basic training. And in the military, we have this thing called AIT, Advanced Individual Training. And I graduated, and that's basically the final step. Okay, now you finish your basic training, and whatever your MOS is, basically that is like an internship, if you will. So I finished all of that. And now it's time for me to go out and be an actual soldier assigned to military units throughout the world. At that particular moment, when I graduated, let's say it's 250 other service members that are graduating simultaneously. All of them had family. I was the only person standing there that did not have one single family member that showed up. And it was heartbreaking. It's not like they didn't know that I'd send them letters and things like that. I even offered, send them money to come down and visit, but no one ever showed up. So that was very heartbreaking for me because it was a milestone moment in my
Right.
life. And then there was another, and I talk about this in the book, where I returned from a deployment to global war and terrorism, and I'm coming from the Middle East. I get back from deployment, and there's all the family members there. They're rejoicing to see their service member, their loved one, return from war. I look around the room, and at that particular time, it was really unbelievable that I was the senior most person in that room, but I had no one there for me.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
literally had to like get another colleague to drive me home because I had no one to pick me up and take me home. So that was just a very gut wrenching, heartbreaking moment in my military career to come back from a lengthy deployment, basically come back to no one there to say, welcome home from a
Oh my
personal
God.
perspective.
I'm pretty sure many who are listening to you right now can identify your story with, those that are in service and have same type of predicament. What kind of hope can you give them? What got you out of that, Rob?
What got me out of that was I use fuel. I take life's hardships, life's failures, and I turn them into what I like to say, I turn them into a challenging moment to say, what can I take away from this negative moment and make it positive? So from that particular experience, both of those times of feeling hardship, I just basically said, I am going to not dwell on it. I can only affect and change what I can affect and change. And
Wow.
unfortunately, I can't go back and turn the hands of time. I'm going to forgive them. So I don't allow their disappointment with me to continue to, hamper and hinder my emotional ability to move forward. And I just don't dwell on it. And if
Mm-hmm.
you feel that you don't have the mental fortitude to overcome that on your own, I actually didn't have that when I came back from Iraq because I was also dealing with some other emotional hardships. So you go seek help. You go seek professional help. And I'm here to tell you,
Mm,
don't ever feel as if seeking help is a sign of weakness because it's not.
that's good. So, in the becoming phase, you were stationed to Korea. I love reading
Mhm.
that. I love the part where you met your wife. You met the love of your life. Speak into that a little bit. I celebrated. I was joyous when I read that.
And I think that is the becoming phase is like hey, here's the culminating event. Um,
Yes.
so meeting my wife was just one of the most memorable moments, defining moments of my life. I'd returned from a deployment and I remember when we met, we started dating. And at that, what really connected us was we just had a lot of shared chemistry, a lot of shared things that we like to do as far as like music and travel and foods. So we just connected and had a very great chemistry. And one of the things that we decided to do, and this may be a surprise to some of you, most people don't go to counseling until there's something wrong in their marriage. But we actually said we're going to go to counseling before the marriage to make sure that
Wow.
if there's any issues that are little quirky things about me or quirky things about her. We want to identify those things before we get into the marriage. So that way they don't surface later. So that's one of the things that we did. And that has been, one of the strongest, I would say, wisest decision that we made. Wisest decision that we made was by doing that because we really learned a lot about each other. And we did
Hmm.
not violate, if you will, those type of things that we both knew that
Sure.
hey, this was a trigger for him or this is a trigger for her type thing. So it
Wow.
really helped us out a lot.
Thank you for being vulnerable with this. For those they don't know this, but this is our second record, and I'm so glad we have this record. This is so much better, Rob. We're kind of jumping to the end parts of the book, becoming. Your goal was to be a command sergeant major, and I didn't know how high that was. Would you say that your wife was part of the process? Your family was part of that? Like, can you share with us about that real quick?
Yeah, so by the time I met my wife now, I was married before, and I talk about that in the book. So I won't speak on that one because I want people to read the book and kind of understand how that particular situation went and how it
Mhm.
ended. But my wife now, by the time I met her, I had just made the list at that particular time to say that I was going to go to the sergeant's major course which is out at Fort
Wow.
Bliss, Texas, the following upcoming year. So when I met her, I had already made command sergeant major or made sergeant major at that particular time. But what was the fuel throughout my military career? It goes back to just childhood and that whole environment. I just never wanted to return back to there. I never wanted to have to go back and say, I need your help. I wanted to always be the best possible soldier I could be. And that fuel came from my childhood of not feeling like I belong, my childhood of feeling unwanted and unappreciated. I felt when I joined the Army, I had brothers and sisters in arms that accepted me for my flaws, accepted me for my strengths, and accepted me for my weaknesses. And I wanted to continue to be the best soldier I could in that particular profession because that's where my true identity was, and that was my becoming of my book.
That is so neat. I guess so. We're coming to the end. So you led from strength. You led, like you said, you had these icebergs in your life, and instead of using it against you, it was for you. Would you say then, once you got to this point, it seemed like when I read your book, you're not your typical leader. You really believed in your people. You also built them up. You also yelled at them, but then you built them up. If someone was listening to this right now and they want to give up on life, what would you say to them?
I would simply tell them that regardless of what you're going through, it does not mean it's the end. You have so much more life to live, so much more to achieve, so much more to be successful in. Whatever it is that you're going through, don't be afraid to turn to God and pray on it and have a little bit of faith. The Bible says
Yes.
you just need the faith of a mustard seed. You know, that's all the Bible say that you need as far as faith is concerned. Please know that there is going to be a brighter day. There is going to be light at the end of the tunnel, as I like to say. But don't allow this one hardship, this one challenging moment to break you and define you. Use your friends, use your network, use your resources to help you get through this. And once you do get out of it, look back at it and say, how did I get here? And how can I ensure that I don't allow myself to get back into this same situation ever again? And I think you would be perfectly fine if you do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. We're coming to our rapid fire. I have just 5 questions to close
Okay.
out. Did you enjoy your interview?
I enjoyed it. I loved it.
Before I come to my 5 close, please share with us what are you doing now? What kind of events are you doing? You mentioned like a bunch of people are asking you to speak. Please tell the guests how can they find you and just share with our guests before we wrap up, Rob.
Okay. So now I recently spoke at a men's Christian group. I did a book signing there, spoke to about 60 to 70 men that were just trying to become closer to Christ. They used my book as a catalyst to kind of help people in doing that. I also spoke at a military forum type event where there were other senior enlisted personnel and officers that came in and listened to me spoke about my book and my journey along the way and did a book signing there. I've
Okay.
also been on a podcast for inspiration, just based off of my book. And
Wow.
there were a lot of questions about, my childhood and just using that as a fuel to become a command sergeant major. If you want to connect with me, you can connect with me on Instagram at CSM Donald Rob Robertson. You can connect with me on Facebook under Donald Robertson or on LinkedIn. So those are the ways that you can connect with me. And my book is available right now on Amazon. It is doing very well. It's available in paperback and also available in Kindle.
And you said there was a bulk order.
So I do have a couple of bulk orders right now in progress. One has already been completed for a juvenile shelter in Virginia.
Mhm.
And there's a second order from another juvenile shelter in Virginia that's in the works right now as well. Anyone that is in, juvenile type corrections or foster care or any of those type of environments, this book would definitely resonate with that group and that demographic. So highly recommend looking into it and maybe using this as an educational type event to kind of help them get through maybe some of the hardships and challenges that they're going through.
Nice. I'll be posting the link for you guys to be able to click through what he just shared, his handles on Instagram and LinkedIn. Please buy his book, you guys. It's an amazing book. It's a great read. He's able to do speaking engagements as well.
Absolutely.
Here's a rapid fire. One word that defines leadership. Go.
One word that defines leadership: humility.
What would you tell your younger self?
What would I tell my younger self? Don't give up.
So good. What moments change your life forever?
What moment changed my life forever? Joining the army.
And what made you stay when you wanted to quit?
What made me say I wanted to quit? When the army, I knew it was my time to quit when the army started making a lot of changes that just didn't resonate well with me.
And what legacy do you want to leave today?
The legacy I want to leave is I was a person that was known for being approachable, that was known for being sensible, that was a person that respected others, that other people could emulate and wanted to model. If I could be known for that, and that would be my legacy, I would be perfectly fine. I'm not doing this for fame. I'm not doing this for money. I am strictly doing this for one reason, to touch the hearts and souls of other people.
Well said. Well, guys, this is our conclusion of our interview. So glad. Thank you, Rob, for showing up. And
Thank you
guys,
for
hit
having
the
me.
like and subscribe. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.